any of the adepts. Nice quick recall there. Oracles come in, but the queens politely yet firmly ask them to leave. The adepts back at home. All right, Robo Bay Twilight Council is classic. Pulls out his Prima strategy guide and starts checking off parts of the tech tree that he hasn't yet gotten. As classic, just in love with those high-tech Protoss builds, sometimes to his detriment, but sometimes it allows him to just catapult into victory. Dark Infestation Pit on the way, as well as an Overseer headed in towards the main. And he will get eyes on the Twilight finishing, the Robo Bay, the Forge. So this doesn't really narrow down the tech very much. As right now, Classic mostly focused on the ground army. He didn't even get blinked. He's going straight towards charge. And get off my... The queens take out one of the oracles. And a stasis on the gold base. Surprised Dark didn't take... By the way, Dark didn't even take the gold, which is kind of a crazy moment. That's actually a rarity in Dark expanding, quote-unquote, normally here. But instead just deciding on a more standard layout, though I'm assuming as time goes on, the gold base will be open for business. Looks like we're going just full-on tech rush for everyone involved. There's a fleet beacon as well. +1 air, extended thermal lance, charge. +1 ground weapons, another Stargate, and a new car for Classic. He gets absolutely everything and then some. He will have access to the entire tech tree besides Templar. And I bet that's next on the agenda. As when you're going carriers, it's definitely a carrier rush, if we're getting technical about it. This is way quicker than you're usually going carriers in your average game. But it isn't the first thing on the agenda. Essentially, Dark scouted that... There's the Templar Arc. He scouted that Classic was going to go for this ground army. He sees the Robo Bay, he sees the Twilight, he sees the Forge upgrading. Alright, you got a ground army. And now the carriers are arriving. So Classic kind of skipping the step where we go back and forth with that ground army versus Colossi or Lurkers on either side. And instead is trying to get enough carriers for a knockout blow that sweeps Dark out of the game. But right now he has to make it look good. He has to sell to Dark that he's going for a ground-based push. I don't know if Dark is exactly buying what he's selling right now, but he's got Lurkers on the way. The only indicator that Dark is well, Dark is unaware of the carriers based on the fact he doesn't have a Spire. Except, Dark is one of the few players who I've seen deal with carriers without a Spire. Though it is kind of it puts a timer on your unit composition, because 6-8 carriers with Storm underneath, eventually the Hydras are just not gonna get the job done. So, maybe Infestors, but there are none of them on the field. A Nidus is on the way. Lurker Nidus can be used to dismantle the defense. Dark has been using a lot of tactical Nidus in order to reinforce pushes, which feels like the natural evolution, puns intended, of Zerg's strategy. It's just no one, until this year, it feels like, with Cyril and Dark, no one's really used it very regularly for that. But now, Dark is nearly maxed out. He's got Hive Tech Lurkers finishing up. +2, +1 in production. He doesn't know yet about the carriers, but we'll see if he cares about them. Meanwhile, Nidus into the main. Classic. He has the Warpins to respond. It will keep him busy. Dark scouts the carriers producing. Warp Prism towards the north side, intercepted by the Queens. Not taken out yet. Nidus actually finishes Queens on the run. Meanwhile, the Lurkers are headed right towards the natural, where there's 2 Robos. Looking vulnerable right now. The carriers are completely out of position. Revelation dropped across the board there. But the Robos are very likely going to be taken out. But the carriers, he yanks it in, but to what end? Yeah, now you're closer. There's only like 3 Hydras underneath. Parasitic Bomb is helpful. Those 3 Hydras trying their damnedest to get the damage done, but there's just not enough anti-air here. The reflexive abduct into realizing you don't have any counter to carriers. Dark throws 17 more, 20 more Hydras into production. And he's actually got a few in the main. He managed to pick off some of the probes. He took out the base at the bottom right. But Classic is most of the way to building the full carrier death ball. The storms dropped across the front line, but the Robo is taken out. Dark finished what he started. And a mothership is on the way. Stats popularizing it. And the tactical mothership, which nowadays costs less than a carrier, depending on how you measure it, but 350, 250 for the carrier, 300, 300 for the mothership. But that, like, they might sell you the carrier, but they don't sell you the interceptors. Those come separately. Well, they sell you 4 interceptors, but 15 minerals apiece. So the effective cost of a carrier baseline is actually 410 minerals and 250 gas. And it only gets worse over time as the interceptors start dying. It's not a massive investment. We've gone back and forth on the inflation for interceptor costs. At one point it was 5, at one point it was 25. 15 is the compromise we landed on, not quite a while ago now. Ever since we stopped messing with like Graviton, Catapult, and Release Interceptor. The not so good old days. The Hydras will scout the Prism will scout the Hydras. Neither is particularly happy about this. The Lurkers at the Watchtower will be driven back by the carriers. Hydra's forced to retreat. Carrier count, 8 of them. Going on more. Building 2 at a time, still rebuilding that double Robo. In fact, Classic was left without any Robos at all. So making detection a little bit more painful. You still have the Oracles, but those are active revelation, rather. The Nidus uncontested at the natural here. Dark just throwing it out there. Here come the Oracles to deal with it. Well, that's certainly a response. Okay. Dark's like, fine. Okay, dude, use your stasis. Sure, he had plenty of time to deal with that, and now the problem has escalated, and Dark found 2 more Robos and will absolutely rip them apart. He may just pop right back into the Nidus before this is all said and done. Slaps down another one. This is becoming way too much of an issue. Denies +2 air weapons. Dark is getting way too much mileage out of this Nidus. I have no idea what Classic was thinking. He's like, what if I stasis things that come out of it? Well, Dark missed the opportunity to actually dive back into the Nidus. Rarely do you see someone trading out Lurkers for Corruptors. But I guess Dark doesn't really have any other unit. He only has 17 Zerglings. Lurkers are kind of the dead weight now, which is... Well, he's building 7 more Lurkers, so... That argument doesn't hold up very well, but... That's so many carriers. 11 carriers. And going on unlucky 13. We'll see if Classic can make it work. Meanwhile, essentially all the rest of the upgrades being upgraded by Dark. He's got a Baneling Nest on the way with Baneling Speed as well, which is likely a misclick, or Dark knows something we don't. Always possible. Double air upgrades, just finished +1. Weapons, and now going on Carapace. Another Nidus at the natural. We got Ultralisk Speed in production. I assume Chitinous Plating is already there. Indeed it is.